Hello and welcome to the Kick Sugar Summit, the world's first summit on the topic of sugar, sugar addiction, and sugar addiction recovery. We know that if we're going to reverse our rising rates of chronic diseases, we need to reduce or eliminate our consumption of sugar and refined carbohydrates. We are here to help you do that. There are a lot of speakers on our summit and a lot of information. Don't get overwhelmed. Catch who you can and let the rest go. Alternatively, you can purchase one of our Summit speaker packages, which comes with an awesome ebook summarizing the core insights of each speaker, resources from our world experts, and access to a whole year of weekly drop-in live Q&As with me, Florence, your host. Thank you for being here. I hope you love the summit. I hope it changes your life. Welcome, everybody, to the Kick Sugar Summit. I'm with Sharon Laflamme today. Is that how you say your last name?
It is.
Okay. And this is going to be a really beautiful treat and a very special addition to this summit, because usually we talk about the science of sugar and how sugar is harmful to the body, especially in excess amounts, and how good it is to reduce, if not eliminate it. And then we talk about addiction and how for some of us that's really hard, right? Really, really hard. And we need, some insights and strategies. And then once we've maybe put the sugar down and our body's starting to heal, almost all of us discover, oh, wow, there's a whole lot more going on for me with respect to my stress and how I manage my emotions. And there's this whole other level of recovery work that needs to happen. And this is Sharon's area of expertise. She's an incredible story of recovery as well. But let me just read her bio. She's the facilitator and founder of Creating Serenity. She has taken her life's passions of human behavior, health, nutrition, yoga, meditation, and incorporated them into creating an internal space for healing. Healing herself and others has been a lifelong passion. Her journey through childhood trauma created the need to heal. And as an empath, that meant everyone she was in contact with. She became a certified somatic experiencing practitioner, where she helps transform pain into peace, where trauma symptoms resolve, and clients feel integrated and whole. Vitality is restored. Clients finally feel at home in their body. She works with people with childhood trauma, resolving the many health issues that, I have just an incredible wave of grief coming over me right now. Wow. Just being with you, Sharon, is bringing it up. Wow.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about my own daughter that I love so much. And I was thinking that I would love her to work with you. Wow, sorry.
Yeah, no, don't be sorry. This is how we heal. You have just shown everybody exactly how the somatic experiencing works. When we're in a safe place and we trust our body and we've learned to honor and learn to feel in our body, and we trust it enough, what needs to show up and come to be healed rises up in waves of anger, terror, sadness, whatever needs to heal arrives at the right time. But we've been taught to stuff it, shove it, and whatever coping mechanism will do that. And so I want to honor you today in being authentic and allowing some of the most needed healing to arrive.
Thank you, Sharon. She works with people with childhood trauma, resolving the many health issues that present due to the nervous system's dysregulation. She is a seeker of knowledge and evolution, a certified Kripalu yoga teacher with an associate's degree in chemical dependency, Ayurvedic functional medical advocate, a summit presenter, podcast guest speaker, and she is on the board of the Love Makers Foundation. That sounds interesting. Welcome, Sharon.
Well, thank you, Florence. Thank you for the invitation, and for all of you out there. It's an honor to be here.
Let's start with your story. So tell us a little bit about, your journey through trauma and through to the other side that's enabled you to circle back around and help the rest of us come through it as well.
So my journey started with being born into a family of two alcoholics, mental illness. I was the last child and the second child. And so my older sister didn't really care about me too much. I was pain in the neck. And there was nobody there that really I could attach to and feel safe with, which started the trauma, right? The biology of an infant needs an attachment to a safe person to survive. And we can talk about that if you want. But for me, I didn't really have that. Plus, living in an alcoholic environment, there's no stability. You never know what's going to happen next. You can't also trust what's coming out of people's mouths. So the grandest thing is the empathy and the intuition shows up to keep you safe, which is how I help people heal. And you just experienced some of that as well. So I realized early on that I wasn't the problem, even though I wanted people to see that there was a problem. There was no problem. I was the problem, the scapegoat, right? But I realized when I left the house real early that I needed to be different. I was a very sickly child because trauma makes you sick. I had ulcers in first grade. I had ear infections and abscessed ears. I was constantly in the doctor. I was tranquilized by the medical system. And ignored, basically. Treat the symptoms, don't get to the root problem, which is the sick family. And the fact that you're not safe in your home and your body's letting you know you're not safe in your home. But when I left home, I had lived with smokers as well. So I had quit smoking. I had started running. I was teaching aerobics before they was mainstream because I was always looking for ways to feel better in my body, and expelling this extra high activation energy felt better, and it was a form of therapy. And luckily, instead of going to be an alcoholic and do all the things that typically would happen, I always found what would be considered a better form of feeling better in my body. I also got into yoga at 50 and, meditation, Reiki 25 years ago, got into always looking into cognitive therapies, EMDR, did a lot of things for myself to feel well. But when I found the somatic experiencing, it was like I came home, because now we're working at the part of my body that's at the root problem, because all the running, all the meditation, all the yoga, all the stuff, the breathing, all that stuff helps. But I call it a Band-Aid on the real problem, because the trauma would still show up. I'd still get triggered. I'd still be that tiger attacking somebody if I didn't like what was happening, right? Or I felt this well of anxiety show up going, why? Because what really was creating the problem was my inner child, so unsafe and so fearful of whether it would be safe or not. And so that was easily attacked by very, small things. So we find ways to feel better in our body. And I found a lot of ways, and many of those have been in the healing other people as a way of also feeling better in my body. And so, I have found the somatic work to be so transformational that I just can't help but want to help people and understand and experience how it's so different, because cognitive therapy can just re-traumatize you. Because we have these wonderful prefrontal cortexes and we can think a lot, we can traumatize ourselves constantly with thoughts. And if you've ever practiced any kind of sewing, needle, coloring, meditation that makes you feel calm and alive and relaxed, that's because the brain shuts off, because the brain is here to keep you safe and to tell you, don't do this, don't do that, do. And when you are safe and calm and relaxed, your brain calms down because it doesn't need to be there, and you're safe in your body. Your bones settle, your vital energy restores, you feel whole and connected to all that is. And I had never experienced that. I lived on high adrenaline most of my life, and it brought my health down, and it brought my mental stability down. And it brought down enough that I was graced to find this therapy that has just been, it's been cutting edge.
And how old were you when this happened? So it sounds like in your 20s, you started a journey of healing then, and you started to realize that I need to feel good. And so running did it, and yoga did it, and Reiki, you got into Reiki and that sort of thing. How old were you before you found the somatic work?
Probably 50, 55, somewhere
Oh
in there.
my gosh. Okay. So more recently, so all those years you were feeling better, but you hadn't quite yet got into that root autonomic nervous trauma piece yet.
Right. I thought I was doing well, and I could feel well for a long time. But interestingly enough, my autoimmune markers weren't changing all that much. While I was doing the aerobics and the yoga and the running and all that stuff, I could feel better in my body for a while, but it didn't change my physiology because, see, trauma is a physiological event. It happens to the body, and the body always keeps the score. And we are always trying to regulate our nervous system and feel safe and okay and enough in our body. And that's what creates a lot of our behaviors. Why do we take up that sugar? Why do we take that drink? Why do we eat whatever it is? Because we want to feel better. And it's natural, and it's also autonomic. I mean, and automatic as far as we can't necessarily judge ourselves because it's done without thinking. When we're in trauma, the prefrontal cortex gets shut off, and we are in a danger survival state. And we don't need to think in a danger survival state. We need to act. So the body sets up every system to be ready to survive, fight, flee, whatever. And thinking isn't part of it. So if you're mad at yourself because you can't stop putting that in your mouth, don't be, because that is the way the body's designed. You need to survive, and we don't need you to think right now. We need you to act.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I want to go back to one thing and then I want to build on that. I do CBT. I recommend CBT. I love CBT. And you said that it can be re-traumatic. Did you mean just thinking or ruminating itself, or the actual process of reframing negative thoughts can be traumatic?
I like to use cognitive therapies when the brain comes back on board. So when there's enough release of the nervous system's high hypervigilance, guardedness, activation, and the brain starts coming on board again, now we can use our brain to think. Other than that, we can't think clearly. We can't make good decisions. And when we make good thoughts, we can say, don't worry, I'm safe now. Oh, you can make a good decision here. But when we're traumatized, we get triggered and we don't make a decision, we make a reaction. So until we can get our body at a safe enough place that the brain can help us make a decision, otherwise we're making a reaction, which means if you're going to talk about a scary situation or thinking about a conflict or something that scares you, I mean, I could sit here and work myself up into a trauma state just with my thoughts. And that's what happens with a lot of therapy, and why it doesn't work is because the body isn't ready to have these thoughts. We just re-traumatize ourselves.
Got it. Okay. And so by cognitive therapies, that could include talk therapy. You're not specifically talking about the process of like the Byron Katie's work, where you take the feeling, you figure out, is there a thought behind that? And then you just look at the opposite and see if it shifts. Like, that isn't necessarily re-traumatizing, but just talking about it, bringing up memories and things that are painful or what the trigger was, that can just keep us stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Yeah. And I think exactly right. And I think one of the distinctions that I want to make here is I love Byron Katie's work, and I love therapies and things, as long as we're at a place where we can work it. We have to be able to work it in our brain.
Yes.
And if we're in a survival state, so let's do it this way. If we're in a survival state, our brain doesn't function the same way as when we're in a relaxed, calm state. Yes. And this is how I like to say it to people. If I'm a baby and my mommy is there for me, and she soothes and calms me, and she builds my ventral vagal nervous system, and I have capacity to soothe myself now and to feel loved and safe and loved and love myself. I go out into the world. This world is safe. I am loved. I am the cat's meow. I didn't get attached. The world is unsafe. I don't know how to control my nervous system. I'm either out of my mind, scared, or I'm in this freeze state of collapse, depression, and I don't know what to do with myself. The world is scary. I'm not loved. I'm not safe. And this is where I'm thinking from. And all the biology of the brain, nervous system, and body decides, right, how I'm going to think about stuff, which is why it's really important to be safe. The body has to be safe and calm before we can really think rationally and make a good decision. But I think time to time, some of this stuff is good, to answer your question, because we can do the Band-Aid thing I talked about. It can be a little Band-Aid. We could at least calm ourselves for a moment if we're doing the right thing, right? We can think about stuff a little differently. If it helps, like a Band-Aid approach, great. But to get to the root problem, it's all the people in our world say you can't get there from there until you work on the biology of the body. And
Gosh, interesting. Yeah, so that's very helpful. So let's talk a bit about what is trauma. And you talked a bit about attachment. Do you want to elaborate on what trauma means?
So there's a lot of field of thought here. Basically, trauma is not a experience. It's not an event. It is what a body experiences, what a nervous system. So the body, the nervous system, the central nervous system has an autonomic nervous system, and that is our peripheria in our internal neuroceptive states, in our proprioceptive states, in our interoceptive states. There are 80% of our nerves that come from the gut, the organs, the external, coming up to the brain and informing you, are you safe or are you not? And this all happens unconsciously without our permission. As soon as you walk into a new space, you orient. Your body is letting you know, it's perceiving, am I safe or am I not safe? Okay. So now I think I'm kind of lost on where I was going with this. So trauma, what trauma is depending on where you are, that nervous system will be traumatized easily if you're very young and something's too loud, too violating, too much, or too little, too long. It just can't cope with it. The nervous system is an electrical system. It can only have so much stimulus. And the younger we are, the less capacity we have because we haven't built in. It takes 17 plus years to build in a really mature nervous system, requiring a really nice caregiver. So depending on where you're at in your age, an event could be traumatizing. It was too loud. And so trauma happens when our bodies are meant to have emotional states, rise up to them and complete them. Everything moves through the body in a wave, just like color is a wave, sound is a wave, radiation is a wave, emotions are waves. So in our body, we want to stay here in this very calm, relaxed state. But if we get agitated and aggravated and we rise up, and if it doesn't come back down and complete, it's now trauma held in the body. So when I was a kid, example, I fell off my bike. And I cried and I screamed and I brought my bike home and I sobbed and I carried on. By the time I was home, I was done. It was complete. I can talk about this without a visceral response, without a triggered reaction, without, pain coming up into my body because it completed. Trauma means the emotion didn't complete. It gets locked away into the systems of the body and every cell in the body, creating this state of I'm not safe and something's wrong. And just so happens, of course, the more we're traumatized, the higher this bar comes, the less ability we have to find safety or relaxation. It's harder to get there. And the body doesn't know how to get there because all it knows is this type of trauma. So that's why childhood trauma is so imperative, because we spend a lifetime building up this activation that the body doesn't know what to do with. And we feel it as anxiety, as stress, as overwhelm, as possible freeze, depression, collapse. I don't care if I live or not. Some of the ways trauma shows up in feeling states because the body wasn't capable of handling the amount coming at it at its time. And it doesn't have to be like a 14-year-old is going to handle something completely different, a same event as a 4-year-old, because it's what was the body capable of handling. And if it's too much, it stores as trauma, because there was usually, and Gabor Mate again will say this, it's not that there was a traumatic event. It's there was so much stimulation in the body and there was no one there. We did it alone to show us how to complete it. That's why mom is so great. You're hurt, you're in pain, you're crying, but they're saying you're okay, you're going to be okay. The emotion comes up, it comes down, you're safe. But when there was no one there, no one showed up, and all this pain arrived, what do we do with it? We stuff it, we repress it, we hold it, we don't know what to do with it. And that's how it becomes trauma.
Right. And I know that in my own childhood, that when I became a mother and I was around lots of kids, my own, because, and then with other moms and play dates and daycare and kindergarten, right? Like there's lots of kids and you realize, man, they cry a lot, and I realized it's so brilliant. Of course they do. They're constantly keeping themselves clear. Tiny little distress. A fly scared them. They cry, right? They just keep their beautiful little bodies clear of any distress. The crying clears it. They relax again. They're happy. They're off and running. And when the cry gets interrupted, because we've all heard it. Probably all kids have heard it. Really? You want it? I'll give you something to cry about. That whole sort of stop your crying. That's really annoying. And you're trying to stuff it and you're trying to stop crying, right? But you're interrupting the healing process of clearing a distressful moment. And how many of us have just learned chronically now to just not even let tears and crying, which is so healing. Like we've forgotten how to cry.
Well, the society teaches us that too. I mean, honestly, we are socialized in this way. And because parents are usually traumatized, they don't want to hear it or listen to it. So it traumatizes them, so they have to have it stopped. And just like Gabor Mate will say, when we're young, we need to survive. And that is, again, what I talked about with you probably before we went on camera. The brain is always trying to decide, is this a safe person to keep me safe and survive, or is this not? And as a young toddler, young child, even before you can speak, you do what you have to make mommy okay, because I need her to survive more than I need my own authentic feeling that's showing up, and I'm not happy, but I won't express it to keep her there because I need her to survive. We lose our authenticity really early. So we don't even know how we feel by the time we're teenagers most of the time, because we've lost the ability to access our true nature to be able to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get it. And have you read the book Mother Hunger yet?
No, I haven't. I have so many books that I want to.
I'm sure it's so good, but she captures that exactly. And there's a line in there where she says, a daughter of a mother who's been abandoned, and somewhere on the spectrum, there's been neglect or inconsistent or insufficient nurturing or protection or guidance. The daughter doesn't stop loving the mother. The daughter just doesn't learn how to love herself. And I just thought, man, does that ring true for me? I loved and adored my mother, and I followed her around, and I was just waiting for scraps of those moments when she was like, hi, sweet pea, right? But,
Right.
but it was
I'm sorry to interrupt, but for our nervous system to really myelinate and mature the way it's meant to, we need to be seen. We need to be witnessed. Do you see me, mommy? Do you see me doing this? I'm lifting my head. I'm rolling over, whatever it is. That all requires the neurobiology to wire right. And it doesn't happen for a lot of us.
It doesn't. And most of us know this. When I think about my ancestry, Europe, 2,000 years of war. Like, it isn't just First World War or Second World War. Most of Europe, most of the northern white cultures, first industrialized countries went through 2,000 years of war. Most of us are if anyone's not traumatized coming out of Europe, and it's wow, that's short of a miracle. So there's so many of us walking around with these multi-generational traumas. So Sharon, how do we dig ourselves out? How do we begin to repair, the damage and the losses that we sustained?
Oh, wow. Great question. So what I advise and request my clients to do is make yourself a priority, because what has happened here is we've lost touch with our true self, our authenticity, our real feelings. For whatever reason, trauma has made us keep them away. And we also aren't really necessarily socialized to think that we're really important, right? Especially if we grew up without that caregiver that told us, you are so important. I love you so much. And whatever you do is great, right? And so making yourself a priority is number one. And it doesn't require willpower so much. That's the thing with society right now. Society's big on I can stop eating sugar, but willpower is going to last like what, an hour? And then something else is going to kick in, automatic behavior. But we have to first say, I'm important enough to know how I really feel. And then I invite people to make that commitment that what's going to happen is you're going to put yourself as a priority. And that's a big deal, right? And then I'm going to invite you to find places in your life where you can get into the parasympathetic state, which is the only place in your life ever, whether it be any kind of illness, mental, emotional, whatever, we heal. We are made to heal in the parasympathetic state, which is rest, digest, relaxation, sleep, detoxification. Wholeness happens here. Vitality happens here. You live in a state of calm aliveness, creativity, and kindness to yourself and others here. Many of us don't even know what that state feels or looks like, which is what I like to help people feel. One of the first things in my discovery session is, let's see how it feels to feel this way. And oftentimes they're like, wow, it's such a different state of being from how we're used to performing. So let's start training the nervous system to be here, down here more. Find the resources that get you there and do them. And that's what people, I mentioned to you earlier before we got on, people get caught up in the day-to-day thing and they forget that meditation, exercise, yoga, relaxation, knitting, all the stuff, reading that really serves their nervous system, teaching it to calm down, they forget to do, right? But if we don't train the nervous system, it's not going to get in the habit of coming down. It's going to stay up here. So we're training it. Let's come down. So we have some capacity and resilience to move up and down and know that we're going to be okay down and know how good it feels to be down. So we're training the nervous system. So start doing your resourcing every day. I tell people to take their phone, put on every hour on the hour alarm. Oh, I'm supposed to check in. How do I feel? How's my breath? How's my tension? How's my heart rate? Do I feel open and expansive, or do I feel contracted and pissed off? Whatever. Notice. And then maybe give yourself a few breaths and a few moments to regulate and try to calm. But checking in, we spend the whole day performing and never knowing how we feel in our body. So the process starts with committing to yourself to notice how you feel in your body, because your body is always keeping you safe. When it's in pain, it's telling you it's not safe. When you're in anxiety, it's telling you I'm in a survival state, I'm not safe. We're checking in with all the survival state cues that show up: heart rate pumping, breath shortening, digestion getting shut off, all this stuff. We can go over them if you want, but so much happens when we get in a survival state, which can take one thought to get there. And so we're tuning in to find out, how does my body respond day to day? How am I feeling in my body? And is there something I can do to feel better in my body and bring down? So we have to know how it feels to be relaxed and parasympathetic to some degree. We often don't have any idea we can go so much deeper, but we're working on that. We're building that capacity to go deeper here and lean up here less. So those are the basics that we need to be working on. And how it happens is we feel. We go inside and we notice, oh, there's a clench in my gut. Oh, my heart's doing this. Oh, I feel this like whole shield showing up. Oh, I'm so clenched. My feet are tight and clenched. And just checking in so we can start knowing how the body feels. So we can start healing it. But first we have to notice it with awareness. And that's the big key. We spend our whole day totally unaware of how we feel, how we're feeling. We might know how we think, but we don't know how we feel and how the thoughts affect our feeling. So diving into feeling, which is completely opposite of what we're taught to do in this world. We're taught to be up here in your head where you're going to be rewarded and recognized, and you'll feel good about some of your accomplishments. But you've also cut yourself off to one of your biggest, greatest resources, which is your body, which is always keeping you safe. And we'll tell you, if we listen with deep intent, drop in and check it out.
I know that for much of my life, I know that almost everybody disassociate and we fall on a spectrum. I don't think I do a lot. And I don't know if I'm an anomaly that way. I feel really present in my body a lot. And often it's just not comfortable. I might have a migraine. Now, this isn't so much true. And this is more especially true when I was in sugar and eating junk food. I mean, on any given day, there was a muscle that ached, something hurt, I had a migraine, I was depressed, or if I got calm, I was exhausted, like my adrenals were burnt out. It felt like crap in there, Sharon. I didn't want to linger in there. Like, that does not sound like very, very fun advice here. So tell us what comes after that part.
Well, you just explained it perfectly. So let me break it down so you understand how your nervous system kept you safe, right? First, you disassociate and you don't feel. And when I go in to feel, I don't like what I feel because my body shows up in every cell and every system with something that got stuffed in there that I didn't deal with. So on a day-to-day basis, we push through it. We decide not to feel it. We go on and we live in this activated state. Or as like you said, I start to calm down and I just feel exhausted because the body will live at this state and it'll either shut you down into an exhausted, depressed, collapsed state, which often happens for us. Or as a lot of people, I don't meditate. They get either more anxious or like you, I just got lost it. That's because your body needs it to repair, but you won't let it because you're going to push it until it says you can't go anymore. So we often go through these stages of, I'm going to put myself on these deadlines. I'm going to have all these expectations. I'm going to push myself into work, because if I don't, I just feel totally exhausted because your body really needs to recuperate, relax, and rest. But that feels so foreign. I don't feel alive because I've spent my whole life alive up here. And so when I'm down here or even deeper into collapse and depression, it doesn't feel good. So we have not honored our body and we've gone through these functional free states is what happens when you start just feeling, oh, I just don't feel like myself. I just lost my energy because your body's saying this is time to rest, recuperate, and slow down. And so we go through these states of high activity and functional freeze where we're pushing through it, but our body's really just kind of there. And in order to push it, we're going to caffeinate it, we're going to scare it, we're going to push it.
Binge eat sugar.
Perfect example. I'm going to feed it sugar so I can keep going, because if I slow down just the littlest bit, I'm going to fall into this crash, and I don't want to go there. And that's a body that hasn't been honored, hasn't been taken care of, and has been ignored.
Yes, yes.
Because your body's keeping you safe. When you're feeling that fatigue, it's saying you need it.
And it's interesting for me, and I hope this isn't too personal for people listening to this interview. Maybe others will relate. So I can get that far. So I'm off sugar flour. I'm a whole food woman. I've restored my health. I almost never get migraines or headaches anymore. So many things I don't remember what it was like to be depressed. I remember that I used to be suicidally depressed, but I don't really, I don't remember in my body what it feels like. So much is healed, but not everything, because I know that when I drop into meditation sometimes, or when I do slow down, and, I would say workaholism is probably my secondary addiction, that I do drive, and I recognize that underneath that is a fear, and there is a safety issue. And so when I do slow down, and maybe this is unique to workaholism, but I slow down, and maybe I'm like, I'm not going to work. That's it. It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go take the night off. I'm going to go and color, or I'll play cards with my husband, or I'll go for a bike ride. If I exercise, I'm fine. But if I do something not movement oriented, it's like this anxiety comes in. I'm like, oh, something bad's going to happen if I don't. Did I get enough done today? It's this fear comes in. So I'm kind of damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. There's sometimes, I'd say frequently, I'll go, you know what? I might as well just go and get that one damn thing done off my to-do list, so it'll stop bugging me, so then I can relax. Because that check mark makes me feel more relaxed than just meditating. What do you have to say about that?
And it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
When we're traumatized, we live in our left brain. And part of the work we do, honoring ourselves and feeling, is bringing the right brain back in on board. But we had to cut that off to take care of everything to keep us safe, and our brain had to be busy. So it was trained in you that I'm safer when this thing's going 50 miles an hour and I'm going 50 miles an hour. And if I stop, holy crap, the shit that I never dealt with is going to come up.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, which is this game of, how does my body feel? Because somebody might love meditation and really like it, and somebody else turns into a super activated state. It's scary as hell, right? So we find out how our body reacts, what our body feels like, what signals is it saying, what does it need, so we can offer it to you. Because you know what some of your coping mechanisms are. So then we start to get into, let's find resource states, and let's start to really feel what the body's saying. And that's when you go off and do something busy, because you don't want to feel what's really showing up.
Yes. And maybe that I'm not picking the right way to relax. That there's times when I really love meditation, and it's so deep and it's beautiful. And there's times I need to go out and go for a bike ride, and maybe there's times I need to go and dance to music, right? And to recognize that maybe there's times when I do need to relax and turn off and switch off and feel relaxed and having fun and not working, but that I'm not always picking the right tool at the right time, that I think that I should always be able to just do nothing and be happy. And maybe that's not always true.
Well, and you really hit the nail on the head once again, because you just brought yourself into I commend you on the healing that you've done for yourself. Congratulations. But there is the point, where can you be just okay here, without something else, that you need to feel okay, to feel safe. And to be in that state requires a lot of work. And so tools are great to help you get there. But if you can only be there with a tool, then you still have work to do. because the state of total parasympathetic is, I'm laying on the floor looking at clouds and I'm totally fine with this. And I'm happy and I'm feeling so wonderful in my body, right? And I'm feeling so wonderful about myself. And so a lot of it, which is why I'm on the Love Makers Foundation too, is, 15, 20 years ago when I started teaching yoga, aerobics was about willpower and push the body. But yoga was about, let's find out a little bit deeper about what's going on. And let's check in with what my body really wants. And so we can move through different states and have these tools, but we really want to be okay as we are, just as we are. And that state takes time to get there. We have to love ourselves, which is where I was going. If we don't honor and love who we really are, and we can't love ourselves if we aren't honest and authentic about who we are, then we just can't settle, because we didn't get that unconditional love. And if we can't give it to ourselves, it's like, I can't settle because I need to know I'm okay just as I am. And that means a lot of work has to happen. And again, it starts with honoring the body and what shows up and keeping it safe, and know that it's okay. We're very kind and compassionate with what shows up. We aren't judging other people or ourselves. And we just start to learn to love what shows up. Even if I don't like it, I'm going to honor it and I'm going to work through it because I deserve it. And this is how we love ourselves, is as we heal and we put ourselves as a priority. And if we don't put ourselves as a priority, who's going to?
Okay, wonderful. So basically what I took from that is that in that example where I've taken the day off, let's say, and I'm trying to relax, where I've cut off of work a bit early and I'm just going to have some me time in the evening. And I notice that I'm just trying to be chill and just relax and just have open space and just go with the flow of the evening. I'll have some anxiety come in for me. Oh, I start to think about, is the ball going to drop? Am I right? That fear. Yeah. And so for me, the thought of going on a bike ride, now I love exercise. I love being in nature. Like, it truly is a joy and a pleasure. But I can also, it sounds like what I can also be doing with it is using it as the Band-Aid. That the next level for me is to stop and drop and go in and go, what's coming up for me? And how do I show up with kindness and love? And what is it telling me? What do you need me to hear, sweetheart? Right?
Exactly. Love yourself. But what you said was so important. So I used to run to get all that energy out. And then I decided, if I'm not loving this, if my body isn't loving this, then really what I'm doing is punishment. Right? So when you get on that bike, is my body internally loving this freedom, this expansion, this movement? Does this feel good in my body? And if it feels more like I'm going to make this happen, there's two different experiences.
Yes.
So exercise, to me, I wake up every morning connecting, going to the brook, seeing the sunrise, yoga, walking. Nature is one of my favorite things to connect. And those are the ways I feel. Then how do I feel today? Do I feel like doing this? Do I do my cartwheels today? Do I do my headstands today? And I check in with my body. And hey, maybe today isn't the day. Mm-hmm. But we can enjoy those things if we're enjoying them and loving them. But yes. if we're pushing ourselves and making ourselves, so you're not letting your body decide what's really happening here, which it comes down to, what does my body tell me?
Got it. Okay. Got it. So let's take this back to addiction. So every addict has these moments where they're doing great. They're eating their whole foods. They're feeling good. Their lives are progressing. There's transformation happening. And then they hit a trigger that's pretty intense. And before they know it, they're literally in the cupboard if they've eaten something, and they'll call me the next day and say, it literally came out of the blue. I don't even know what happened. I binged last night. How did your work help them? Because obviously you're talking about their nervous system's been triggered, and this automatic behavior is been activated, and they ask me, how do I get in there and pause it so that my rational brain can say, that isn't really the way to nurture us. We don't nurture ourselves like that anymore. What is your best advice in those moments?
So we're back to the basics. If we had stayed in touch and in tune with ourselves, we would have seen this coming because of the way we felt. But what happens when we've been traumatized, our nervous system is so keenly sensitive, right? And we get overwhelmed really quickly, way easier than someone who didn't have the kind of trauma in their life. So when that trigger happens and we move into that reactionary behavior, your body's trying to keep you safe over the overwhelm that was showing up that you couldn't deal with. So if we stick with our resourcing all the time and build up a capacity, and we stick with checking in with ourselves, we could have possibly felt that coming before it showed up as a reaction and trigger. And we would have had the capacity to deal with it. Because as we work with relaxation, parasympathetic, we start to build the body's capacity to deal more, go up and down, deal with a little more. We start to release some of the trauma so our body has more resilience, so we would be able to handle it better. But in saying all that, it's great. But I still have situations where I get caught off guard because we're human, because I do start to get busy or get in my head and I'm not paying attention and I've got overwhelm show up. And I've actually had overwhelm show up last week and I ignored it. And I said to myself, you should be paying attention to this. But did I? No. And then I got a great back spasm shortly after that because I wasn't paying attention. And I knew I wasn't paying attention. So it's really a journey, Florence. Like, we got to be okay with ourselves. That trigger showed up to support you and feeling better in your body. That's why you did it. And sometimes we have to say thank you to all these triggers and all these coping mechanisms because they kept us surviving when we didn't know how to survive. When we start learning the tools, we start having a greater chance of, as you know, to survive with better tools, building that resilience. And we just say, you know what? I caught myself. It was too late for me to do it, but so what? I'll do better next time and I'll be better checking in, because those are the times where we say, oh, I lost doing my basic stuff. Okay, fine. So we parent ourselves, right? We go, it's okay. You're going to be all right. You're human. Keep moving on and doing your best work, because that's how we heal. We keep moving forward and doing the work we know we need to do and loving ourselves. I mean, if we don't, it's okay to have this reaction. It's okay, because that's your body taking care of itself.
Right. And I love that answer, because what you're basically saying is that everyone in the addiction space knows, and everyone who's coaching or teaching or as a therapist working with addicts in recovery, we all know the crazy 8, as I call it in my coaching programs, right? Meditation, time in nature, exercise, move your body in ways that bring you joy and pleasure, not for weight loss, just because it's joyful and pleasurable and relaxing. For us, there's weighed and measured meals, or there's just 3 meals, no snacks. Like, we sort of put some structure around our meals and make sure that they're a priority. We plan them. We cook our own meals. We make sure they're wholesome, whole foods. It's adequate. Like, there's all those sort of core essentials. And so that woman, I'm thinking of a client who was in her kitchen the other night, and she just had this binge and she'd been doing so well. And the answer is, there's probably not much you can do in that moment. It's probably too late at that moment. But if you look back in your day, could you see that you're hitting fatigue, that you'd had overwhelm, that you needed to check out and slow down and go to the bedroom and take a 15-minute nap or ask for help or do something different to support you before you just had no choice but to just go for the immediate gratification of the familiar binge, sugar foods, those sorts of things. Right. Which really says, if you don't like that behavior, you're really done with that behavior, like really done.
Well, and we talked about the fact that those behaviors are there to keep you safe.
Yes.
And when you found, and it comes, let me tell you, when your body knows safety, You've created a safe space. And when we aren't safe, if internally we aren't safe and we find that safety, those things melt away because we don't need them anymore to be safe. We can be safe as we are. So I tell people, don't change anything. As you become safe, that stuff just, you don't need it anymore. And when it does show up, thank you for showing up, because I didn't show up for myself, but you did. And we just keep moving on. And you brought up something earlier, and I wanted to say it because Florence, play is key here. We were meant to play as kids. That's where we learn everything we should be curious about. I'm curious about this feeling that's showing up. I'm curious about how it feels if I was to feel it. I'm curious. And again, am I exercising for play? Yes. If I'm exercising to push myself, no. Play is when we play when we're in a parasympathetic state, and play can get us into a parasympathetic state. And our culture downplays play. And I'm one of the biggest ones of it. And it is a priority. I mean, if you have young kids, it's like you got a chance to play. This is how we keep ourselves safe, grounded, parasympathetic. We really need to put play on a much higher level in our lives to keep ourselves where we really need to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So for individuals listening to this that are struggling with sugar overconsumption, or maybe you're on the addiction spectrum and you're wanting to turn that around because you know it's harming you. It's not a self-soothing behavior you want to engage in anymore. Like, you really don't. You're done. You're done binging. You're done bulimia. You're done, consuming foods that don't serve you. That means that you need to be ready to embrace the work. I call it the daily grind. Maybe that's a bad attitude, but the daily grind of showing up for yourself, right? Like, make your meals, get out in nature, go for walks, carve out time in your day for you, those sorts of things. But that if you want that to end, don't fight this. It's too late. By the time you're in that behavior, it's too late. What you're saying is go and look at the rest of your day and where are you showing up? Is there enough? Is your pleasure bucket full? Are you playing? Do you know how to bring your body into relaxation? Do you know how to restore the parasympathetic? It's a skill. And as we restore the parasympathetic, is basically what you're saying is we heal trauma.
Yes.
And it's not more complicated than that.
It really isn't, except we've learned to fight that, which is why it's a struggle, because you miraculously allowed your grief to show up. Here's a little tip, everybody. It takes about 90 seconds for us to move into a feeling and let it go. So I just worked with a person the other day. Sadness and grief showed up and it went away. And she didn't try to stop it for the first time in I don't know how long. But are you trying to breathe it away? Are you trying to work it away? Are you trying to exercise it away? Are you trying to stuff it away? Are you trying to do all the million things we can do to avoid feeling it? Because if we could just be in the state of open curiosity and trust our body to feel, and that's why we do the basics to get to a place where I'm strong enough to feel. If we allow it, it takes about 90 seconds to show up and finish. And then it's complete. That means it's gone. It's no longer stuck in your body. It's not keeping you up into this high state of activation, and it's healed.
What? Like, that's just radical to me. Like, I just have this vision of trauma recovery work being like deep sobbing cries or like paralyzing reliving of traumas. I don't know what I think. I don't think of it as like this 90-second cycle of just making space for waves of feelings to move through.
Sobbing cries. But if you actually let yourself or watch a toddler, in 90 seconds, the highest point of the motion, 90 seconds. I mean, it's up in probably 30 to 60 and it's down. And then it's complete. But we don't allow ourselves that for so many reasons. We don't know how to find that place.
Yes.
We don't know what safety feels like to be able to feel that. Yes. And we haven't built the resilience of the nervous system, which is really the work of trauma. Because when we start doing all this work and we have an understanding and have a felt sense of safety and capacity, we know we can do it. And I liken it to, okay, we're going to deal with trauma. Let's put it like, I'm going to teach you to swim. Go dive off the diving board. No, I'm going to stick your toe in it. Let's feel what it's like to be in this body. Let's go up to the crotch, okay? Okay, I'm still safe. I'm feeling a little bit more. I'm coming down into my space during the day. I'm really building up, okay? So now we get a little bit stronger and we go into up to the collarbones, right? And it's like, I've built this capacity, I've built this strength, and I've built this confidence because throughout the days I've learned I could feel not great and I can come back to where I feel really great and I'm okay. And I lived, right? Because there's this sense of if I feel this, I'm going to die because it's so young and so.
Yes.
Yes. But we're learning to, I felt it and it was okay. I did it. So now I'm up to here, right? And I'm like, okay. And then there comes the point where I'm going to fully trust what I've been learning and feeling, and I'm going to let myself really feel it. 90 seconds, if you really let it go and let it feel, that's when you dove in and went under, I said, I got to hold my breath, but I can do it, because you finally built up that capacity and confidence to say, you know what? I've done the work, because you can feel it. You feel safe. You feel you've been able to do it, and you don't even have to make the decision. The body does it for you because it knows it can handle it. And it happens. That's why we have all these coping mechanisms, because the body knows it couldn't handle this right now. You would go off into a state that you wouldn't come back from, a dissociation or worse. We can't deal with it, which is how all this stuff showed up. So we slowly train the body to handle it, build that capacity, strength, and confidence. And finally, there's a point where you just, like my client the other day. Mm-hmm. Wow, I don't know why that showed up, it just showed up and it came through, and it's a beautiful thing, and we know how to heal when we can break apart all the beliefs we've learned and all the strategies we've learned, and I shouldn't have used that word break, because I like to think they melt away. We don't need them. We've got greater, bigger resources. And it comes from an empowered feeling of safety and strength and confidence that I know I can handle it, even though I don't like it. We do. We have to deal with stuff we don't like and stuff that's joyous. And so we've built that capacity to feel both ends of the spectrum and know I'm going to be okay and I'm not going to die.
Amazing. I once had a client, I still am working with her. Actually, she has been using food for comfort as a Band-Aid for years and decades. And she experienced not one, but two, but three significant sexual assaults, sexual traumas in early childhood when she was 8. And then I think her last one was at 15. Really, really horrific trauma. And when she'd been eating binge eating sugar flour, particularly chocolate, I should say, actually, really a lot of chocolate. At her height, she was eating 9 chocolate bars a day. Very brilliant, very successful, very bright, like just this amazing woman, but using sugar to just sort of, push forward and be successful in life and to share her gifts and have a good life and make money and all those good things. And one day she slowly started to realize she was gaining a bit more weight. She wanted to get unhooked from sugar and chocolate. And so she gave it up and she went 21 days. And on the 21st day, the flashbacks of a sexual assault that she had repressed came up. Yep. And they just kept coming up. And it's not like she didn't kind of knew it happened, but the intensity of these flashbacks of the sexual trauma, and she shared them with me. They're horrific. Horrific. And I just think, oh my gosh. So of course, there's so many of us that are terrified of putting, this very powerful, very effective coping, emotion suppressing, feeling suppressing strategy down, immediate gratification tool down, that stuff's going to come up that we can't handle. Can you speak to that?
Oh, certainly. 30, 40 years ago, with all the clients that I was working with, I made a determination, and so far I haven't been wrong, that anyone that's overweight It is an unconscious reaction because they've been sexually traumatized, and this is how they keep people away from them. If I get fat enough, ugly enough, they'll leave me alone. And as that weight comes off, now the vulnerability of not having that safety net, right? I don't know. Now I could attract somebody, and it's just too vulnerable, which again is why we start with the basics. How am I feeling right now? How does anger show up? It's real subtle. It's real. I work with boundaries. What happens if I get into your boundary? How does that feel? I don't like it. I want you away. And so we build up this outer layer of fat and body as a boundary to keep people away. And now we're too vulnerable to being hurt if we let that go. So we have to do some of the basic work, right, of the trauma that created some of this to build up the ability of the body. As you're starting to lose the weight, you start to feel the vulnerability and what shows up, and you start to heal it so that it's all done at once, so that you're like not caught off guard by this wave of vulnerability and terror. I mean, that's what shows up is terror, because now I am possibly left wide open for an assault.
Yeah. Or just she didn't know how to handle the emotions, right? And she wasn't overweight at that time. Weight wasn't really her issue then. I think that came a bit later, but what did come up was she put the food down, and then the flashbacks of this assault, this sexual trauma had come up, and she was so overwhelmed by them, didn't have the tools, like didn't even know how to begin to sit with the body. Like it was too intense to be in there.
But she took away her coping mechanism. Her weight was her coping mechanism.
She wasn't overweight at the time.
No, but she had been. And
no, she wasn't. That came later. Yeah.
So then she probably built up some other coping mechanisms to feel safe.
Yeah, the sugar, the chocolate. She was eating chocolate all day, right? Which made her feel safe and comforted and high, and all the dopamine, right? Like she felt that invincibility.
We're using a substance instead of really feeling what's really going on and making us want to use that substance.
Yes.
And that's where the somatic work comes in, is we get brave enough, strong enough, and curious enough to know what's really going on in myself, and how to really heal that in a really compassionate and kind way, right? Instead of not honoring ourselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. All right. To recap, we all have trauma, likely, especially if you are an addict and using food for immediate gratification, for comfort, to check out, to tune out. And that it's less complicated than maybe many of us think in terms of moving in to do the trauma recovery work. It all starts with basics, to spending, even if it's a split second, in your body, and then dipping the toe and learning to just breathe and to be with the body and to feel it and to know what's there, and to be kind and compassionate and curious about what the feelings are and maybe what the messages are. You need to sleep, you need a nap, you need to feel relaxed, you need support, you need a hug, whatever. Like it'll tell you, if you check in, you'll get insights. And then slowly over time, you learn that you're the top priority, that your safety, your welfare, your well-being, feeling good in your body is your top priority. And you start to experiment with what makes you feel good in your body. Like what brings me into the parasympathetic, what works for my body, and making the time to do it, because there's resistance to prioritizing ourselves. Why is that? Why do we resist doing things that make us feel good and heal us?
Well, resistance does show up in the body. You just said it. And if we're tuned into that body, we sense that. We can feel the resistance show up. We really pay attention, right? Mm-hmm. And showing up to keep us safe. Every time the body's keeping us safe. Absolutely every time. There's something going on that it's questioning whether I'm going to be safe or not. So resistance starts to show.
Oh my gosh, that's a revelation for me. So what you're saying, so as we're like, okay, I'm going to start to meditate and go for a walk in nature every day, and we feel this resistance. It's like we can't get out the door and we don't have time for meditation. We're suddenly exhausted, or there's this resistance to doing the self-care. And what you're suggesting is it because in some way, on some level, we don't feel safe doing meditation and walking in nature.
Possibly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Possibly.
So then we need to think about what makes me feel unsafe. Is it because I might feel feelings, or
in meditation, for many people, especially people that have been traumatized for a long time, when the beauty of the somatic work is the body shows up to heal when it's safe. And we aren't safe till we relax and calm down. Meditation is one of those states. So what needs to show up to heal will often arise. So activity, fear, whatever might show up in meditation, which is why, nope, I can't do that because this shows up. It does show up because it's trying to come up to heal because it's safe. The same with resistance. If we keep up this resistance, it can't show up to heal. So, example, I'm walking through the grocery store and this wave of grief rolls over me, just like you just had, right? Why? Because I wasn't resisting anything. I wasn't trying to do any resistance. I'm in a grocery store doing my thing. It wells up to heal because no resistance to it. Resistance is our way to keep it stuffed down and hold it because it's not safe to show up. And it's not, and we won't show any of this stuff up. Safety is the only place we heal. And the biggest thing that people can do for themselves is find safety in their surroundings and in their body. And building that safety and capacity can take quite a while. So it's quite a journey. And that happens by feeling your body and feeling inside. And feeling resistance if it shows up, because your resistance is saying, I don't feel safe right now.
Mm-hmm. Or how many of us equate taking our eyeball off the environment and putting it inside makes us feel unsafe because we're like, what? Am I dropping the ball? Is everyone okay? Do I look selfish? Am I selfish to say to my family, I'm not doing the dishes, I'm going to bed early? Like all this built up guilt that women might have around putting themselves first. So I'm guessing there's layers of the resistance we have to showing up for ourselves.
Sure. And when we're living in this anxious state, some of the best tools we can use are coming into the body because it takes us out of our head and out of this anxiety state. We could feel our feet on the floor, like inviting you right now, feel my feet on the floor, press them into the floor, right? Glance and find something in your office that brings you pleasure. All of a sudden, everything's going to start changing when you start drawing attention and awareness into yourself. And the breath is a beautiful way to do that. Feel and notice the breath coming in. And notice the breath coming out, and put your attention and awareness there, and all that external noise and stuff kind of goes away as you bring yourself into your body. That's how we start to build that safety.
Right. Oh, so cool. I love the practicality of this. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Sharon, I want to end by saying one thing and then asking you a final question to see if there's anything else you wanted to add on the topic. But I want to point out that you came through significant trauma and you're living proof that you can heal, and you did it body, mind, spirit. Like you were doing yoga. You gave up sugar 20 years ago. Is that what you said? Right. You're a sugar-free woman. You did that. You did the hard work of unhooking from the substances that hurt us. You showed up to find new ways of feeling good in your body through yoga and exercise and time in nature, etc., and meditation. And then you did your trauma work, which is amazing. And now you're here to help us do that piece. And I want to say that I asked you, because you said you'd lived in a state for 64 years. In the back of my head, I was like, how old is she if she lived in a state for 64 years? And I just want to add, you're 65 and glowing, and you're living proof that we can feel better and more alive and more whole and joyous than ever, even though we come out of childhoods of trauma.
Absolutely. There's nothing more transformational to regain yourself back, because trauma cuts us off from choices, cuts us off from ourselves, cuts us off from relationships that could build safety and comfort. And there's nothing greater to feel like you're coming home, that you're building this home base of safety in your body. It's transformational, mentally, physically, emotionally. in ways that I can't explain. And some of my Google business has my clients saying some of the things that it works, but it works in a way that we naturally, inherently know how to heal. If we cut ourselves, we heal. We also know how to heal all the other parts if we give us that space, that safety for it to happen. And that's what my work is, helping facilitate people to build the structure, the basics, the safety, the building of the resilience and capacity and confidence for it to do it. And that's the journey. And really, I would never go back. And it's not always easy, but it's so worth it, just like anything else. I mean, when we look back on our lives and we think about what we've been through, when we've really done something authentically with our whole heart and soul, we feel that pride and we know we had that accomplishment and we know, wow, that was hard, but I did it. And that's the way I feel about this work. You know, it's not easy to feel this kind of pain, but we also don't feel it until we're capable of feeling it. And that is a source of comfort.
Right, that we can trust the body. If it's up, we can handle it.
And we've learned to trust it and we've learned to feel it. And we know when it's ready. It shows up when we're ready.
You had a list earlier of all of the different phases of trauma that you read to me. Will you read it again?
Yeah, and these are how unhealed trauma might show up in a body, because it shows up and manifests in lots of different ways. And these are some of the ways. It could be a self-destructive behavior that shows up, fixing other people, people-pleasing, codependency, needing a lot of external validation, living on this high alert, hypervigilance. We fear abandonment. We deprioritize our own needs for others. We need to prove ourselves to others. We tolerate abusive behavior, attracts narcissistic partners. We have difficulty setting boundaries for ourselves. Obsessive compulsive disorders, very high. Addictions, perfectionism, chronic illness, autoimmune disease, chronic stress, anxiety, agoraphobia, chronic pain, irritable bowel syndrome. Those are all ways that the biology of the body is so affected from this state of survival that it has to show up somehow. And these are some of the maladaptive behaviors that show up for us to feel better in our body and not to feel so, afraid.
Amazing. Any final words you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, I've had an amazing time getting to know you, and I want to let everybody know, including you, that we are so worth it. We don't love ourselves enough. We don't care enough about ourselves. We don't put ourselves as a priority. And we really need to have the type of health and well-being that we were meant to have. And even if you do some of the few things I've already showed you, your life will change with just the basics. You will have a different sense of yourself and a different felt sense of yourself. And that alone can change your life and transform anything that you're going through, that you're struggling with. And I know you can do it, because we all have the capacity to do it. So continue on. I believe in you and I love you. And I wish you all the best, and reach out if you need help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sharon. I appreciate everybody tuning in today. We'll see you in the next interview. We hope you enjoyed this interview. And before you go, do one thing. Stop, think back on the interview while it's fresh in your mind, and write down your favorite takeaways in a special dedicated journal. If you do this at the end of this summit, you'll have a page or two of nuggets of wisdom to guide you forward. And remember, this is just the beginning. At the end of this summit, you'll be invited to attend a webinar where I will personally summarize the key insights of each speaker. And you'll be invited to join a 1-year sugar coaching program and private Facebook group where you will be fully supported. Stay tuned for the details.